I'm joined by Alison Maratos from Maratos Counselling. Hi, Alison.
Hey Patty, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Today I wanted to talk to you about COVID-19 and our mental health. And something that you and Rebecca LaFerriere have shared is that people are actually feeling grief right now. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. One of the things that I think it tweaked on Rebecca and I both when we talked about how we've been feeling and coping with this, because we're just the same as everybody else, is that this really is a period of grief for all of us. When we talk about, many people probably heard traditionally about stages of grief. And within the last, when this started, we were in shock, right? I don't know about you, but I would wake up, and I still am, every morning and say, I can't believe this is real. And so we travel through stages, shock. People have been feeling really down and depressed. Then we kind of move on to some anger, because the life that we've lived, what's been normal, predictable, is not there anymore. And we all feel out of control of our situation, and it's very difficult to accept that we don't have any control over this.
And what is anticipatory grief?
So when we are thinking about the future right now, we're not sure what that looks like. So, I mean, for example, just yesterday, I'm losing track of my days. Yesterday, the information about the financial support, the EI comes out. People are doing math calculations in their head about how they're going to be able to keep their family together financially. So they're anticipating potential loss of finances, of homes, of stability. We anticipate loss of what our jobs, what our relationships look like. So I think most people, if they're honest with themselves, have had moments in the past 3 weeks where they've been like, what if this happens? How am I going to cope with that? How are we going to stay together as a family? How are we going to keep things back, get things back to normal? So that's kind of the anticipatory piece that a lot of people are really struggling with, anxiety and depression around this, because we're thinking about what life's going to look like, but we just don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of waiting to see if we do flatten the curve, and waiting to see if we'll be back to work, waiting to see if we're going to get laid off. There's that, I think as a community, everyone seems to be feeling that low point that it's like bad news story after bad news story.
And it's different than normal, because I often say to people who suffer from anxiety, and we all do this to a degree, we have anticipatory anxiety because we're, oftentimes thinking about what tomorrow's going to bring, and what do I need to do today to prevent this problem from happening tomorrow. And we spend a lot of time worrying ahead. When I work with people with anxiety, we like to pull them back and say, okay, we need to stay in the present, which is a great technique. But unfortunately, these days, we just keep, like you say, getting bad information. And now more than ever, it's become crystal clear to a lot of people, we have no idea what the future holds, more so than usual. I mean, normally we could say, if it's a Wednesday, well, I know I have to get up and go to work on Thursday. We don't have that anymore. And I think that's a real struggle for people.
And now one of the other posts that you guys talked about is collective grief. And what does that mean?
So I think right now, for most of us, this is the most significant thing that's happened to any of us collectively, right? I mean, up till now, we've been really fortunate in our area to see something on the news that's happening to a collective group of people, but it's in Europe, it's in Asia, it's across the pond. We see it, we empathize, but we don't experience it. This is the first time that everybody in the entire world, I don't know, I guess think back probably since the World Wars, that everybody's been experiencing the same phenomenon at the same time. If we pause to think about that, that's pretty impactful, that every single person you passed when you're socially distancing walking this morning is in the same boat. Doesn't happen very often.
And I think too, we all can experience grief differently, right? There's different different things that come out in our grief that maybe people aren't even recognizing that they're grieving the loss of their routine, their regular part of their life, maybe grieving the loss of not being able to spend time with their parents or children.
Definitely. I mean, certainly anecdotally with feedback. Well, I'll even give an example with myself. I mean, I've learned this stuff in school. I practice this, I work it. But the first week, I really struggled with my own grief and didn't recognize it as grief right away. For example, I had a really hard time focusing on a task for any length of time. My brain was all over the place. I knew there were things, well, all of us, right? We knew there were things where if the world's pressing the pause button, there's stuff we wanted to do in our homes, right? Clean a closet, paint a wall, but I couldn't get myself focused to do one thing. And then the reality started to hit in of like, well, money and friendships and family and connection, that those responses are what we're all experiencing collectively. And that's so hard to stomach because we don't have context for it. Mm-hmm. I've said to most people who've asked me, we've never been through a pandemic before. How the heck, why are we expecting ourselves to know how to deal with this?
And as a counselor, it's interesting to hear you say that, because not all of us have awareness of behaviors and things like this. So what would you say to people as in terms of some tips for coping through this right now? Because we all thought maybe a couple weeks, but this isn't going to be over in a few weeks.
Right. And that's, I think the reality of that sinks in for different people differently. And even then you can be one day accepting of that reality and then wake up the next day and be angry about it, or be depressed and teary and sad about it. Family relationships are a big part of most of our lives. And, you know, talking to parents of young children, for example, helping them accept it, helping the grandparents accept it, because we can't do those hugs anymore. They can't play. Little kids don't want to sit and have a conversation like we're having on FaceTime for more than 30 seconds. Kids are very dependent on activity-based connection. So there's all these pieces that we have to just give ourselves permission to digest and learn to accept day by day, and keep reminding ourselves that this isn't forever. My favorite therapeutic statement, we're not there yet. Always add yes, yet at the end of the sentence and underline it, because, and unfortunately, again, first time, we don't really know when this is over. We have to give ourselves permission to feel those feelings, whatever they present themselves as on any given day.
That's great advice. And so if someone wanted to connect with you or your partners and their services, you will do some counseling online?
Yeah, so what we tried to do really quickly when it was evident that this was coming down is put video platform in place for people to have counseling. We also do telehealth. So for example, this morning I just worked with a client, and I walked around my circle, my block, while he did his, and it worked out really well. That tends to work well with people I've already worked with because they know me. The video counseling has been in place. We're finding, and a lot of my colleagues I've been in touch with all over the place are saying it is an adjustment for a lot of clients. People, for example, don't like looking at themselves when they're talking. The glitchiness of some of the platforms has been a bit tough because everybody's doing this right now, but it is an option, and I want people to understand that it's just like being in the same room once you get used to it. The other things we're trying to be responsive to is have, normally a counseling session is what we call 50-minute hours, so it's an hour-long session. We're trying to do half-hour sessions because we know people have children at home. They can't block off an hour of uninterrupted time. We're also considering offering groups of some type so that people can connect with other people who are just wanting to talk about this and get some tips from our therapists about how to manage it. We haven't had a lot of takers on that right yet, but again, I think it's because this is new and people are trying to figure out what their lives look like. Excellent. But definitely we're there, and lots of our colleagues in our profession are all out there waiting for people to connect with us, for sure.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your time, Alison. And I would imagine I'll be calling upon you again soon as things evolve to see if we can touch base again, because I think it's really important to talk. And in anything with mental health, always having that openness will help everyone in the end, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anytime.